Good afternoon and welcome back to the board's afternoon session of our business meeting. At this time, we are at board and superintendent comments, but just to kind of keep us on track, board members have, we've decided to not give comments. And Dr. Smith, is there anything that you wanted to say?
I do. I just one, I will forego all of my comments, but I do want to, just for 2 minutes or less, make reference to the Office of Legislative Oversight report that came out in December. And I did share extensively at the news briefing 2 days ago about our concern and frustration that the way that compensatory education, for example, is defined and described, and the formulas that are used, the way that the data was used, doesn't give a clear picture of the school system, and it's not well aligned or coherent. And I'm especially concerned because the report, at least as a reader, I found it to in some way imply that the school system isn't very front-facing and very forward, talking about our strengths, our areas of concern, our areas for growth. But it is not as simple as grade banding 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade together and showing an aggregate. It's not, and that's what that does. And it's not as simple as saying, well, when we looked at the compensatory education funding, you have to know how that law is written and how that money comes to us, and the fact that we have children in poverty in every single school in this county. So we will be responding on January 27th. Dr. Monif has been doing a lot of work with the staff and keeping me apprised and discussing this with me, and we'll be responding to that report. And I'm not somebody who is quick to run and make a big public statement and pound my fist and get angry. But I'm frustrated, and I'm frustrated with our county government and releasing that report without more vetting of it and more careful consideration about the messages that it sends. It's a very complex world. We have areas of real progress and growth, and we have areas that I am deeply concerned about every single day in what happens with our students, their well-being, and their learning. And so we'll continue that conversation, and we will certainly be providing the board with that response before we take it to the county government. So
Absolutely.
You will see it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'll just ask committee chairs, are there any committee updates that you want to give at this time? Ms. Dixon.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I did talk to Dr. Daka and Mrs. O'Neill and Dr. Zuckerman, and we're agreed that we're going to cancel the January 21st Fiscal Management Committee meeting because a couple of things that we need updates on. For example, the cell tower revenue has gone to the policy committee, so that's something they're working on. Ms. Diamond, as folks know from Dr. Smith's memo, is actually on leave right now, I think, and Mr. Morella is acting in her stead, and so to get him comfortable and things like that as well. So we're just going to have our next meeting on March 2nd, which will be at 10 a.m.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Okay.
Ms. Modrowski, special populations, any? Okay. Ms. Wolf, okay. Mrs. O'Neill?
Just the next Policy Management Committee is January 27th.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Silvestre, strategic planning.
Just to say that we had to cancel our meeting because of the weather, but we will be looking for another date to reschedule.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we will move to item 9 for discussion. Dr. Smith, if you want to introduce the panel.
I am very pleased that we have a large number of folks in the audience today because we're going to talk about one of the most important bodies of work in our school system, and that is how we go about structuring and creating environments for teaching and learning. There was an intensive curriculum audit through Johns Hopkins University a few years ago, and it brought forth recommendations about how to move forward with new curricular resources in both our elementary and our middle school, so P8 efforts. The curriculum audit clearly states that curriculum matters, and we know it does. We know curriculum is fundamental and essential for how children learn and how instruction is handled and created in classrooms. How well we teach and what students learn is at the core of our business. It's why we exist. Taking care of them helps them be more ready for learning, and then making sure they have the best resources and material and instructional practice in front of them is very, very important. And I could talk about this for hours, but instead I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McKnight and the team, and they will go forward to give you an update on how we're doing in an incredibly complex project, and that is the implementation of new literacy and mathematics curricula at the pre-K through 8th grade levels.
Good afternoon, board members. Today we're going to talk with you a little bit about our curriculum and giving a little bit of context on the elementary and secondary update on the curriculum implementation. So one thing that we know is that our students and our parents deserve the best access to education in our schools, and one avenue of how we do that is providing the appropriate materials that are appropriate and challenging for our students to learn and thrive. So with that said, I'll reference just that we have adopted mathematics curricula that focuses on coherence and rigor. And there are 3 major shifts of the Common Core State Standards and the Maryland College and Career Readiness Standards are represented in our curriculum. Similarly, we have English Language Arts curricula that provides students regular opportunities to build knowledge from text, to read and write grounded in evidence from that reading, and to practice with complex text and academic vocabulary. And at this table, we've talked about the importance of that academic vocabulary piece for many of our students, and specifically some of our students who really depend on that exposure to vocabulary, especially as they're learning languages like our English language learners. So today, these aspects will be highlighted in the context of our various curricular products. Additionally, we will focus how this is accomplished in the context of ensuring all students are successful, including English learners, students with disabilities, and students in need of greater challenge. And additionally, we are ensuring that the amazing diversity of MCPS is recognized and celebrated in our curriculum materials. Back on December 5th, myself, along with many of you at the table and many of you in the audience, had a chance to hear from our students, and we heard them say loud and clear that they would like and expect to see themselves reflected in the curriculum materials that they utilize in the classroom. And so we thank you, Mr. Tinbite, for putting on that form for us, but our students said that over and over again, and so today we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So students desire to see themselves in the learning materials in the context of themselves in the classroom, and we are committed to advancing those opportunities. So with that said, I will hand it over to Ms. Hazel and the team to begin the discussion. For Dr. Navarro.
So good afternoon, board members. I just wanted you to just note that the full OSIP office is right behind me. If they could stand up, please. And they are here to... and they're here to hear your comments, your input, and your feedback about how we make the work that we do here in central office, how we work with other departments, and how we support our schools better. So that is why we are all in attendance, and I know that the rest of the folks that were here earlier today were eager to stay and listen to this presentation, but do not fear, it is going to be televised and it's online so that nobody misses the critical work that happens every day in school in terms of what are our kids learning every single day. So with that, I will...
Thank you all so much.
Yes. And with that, I'll pass it to Ms. Hazel to introduce the folks that are sitting at the table.
All right, well, could they introduce themselves?
Yes, ma'am.
Be nice.
That would be nice.
Yeah, just introduce
Which side
yourself.
of the room would like to start?
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Putman, Acting Secretary and Math Supervisor. Good afternoon. Siobhan Alexander, Director of Curriculum Implementation. Hi, everybody. Tamisha Sampson, ESOL Supervisor, Elementary.
Good afternoon, Sheila Berlinger, Supervisor Elementary Math and Science.
Good afternoon. Tracy Winfrey Edwards, ESE Supervisor for Literacy.
Good afternoon, Thais Council, Reading Interventionist and Dyslexia Support, Instructional Specialist.
Mari Bennings, Specialist on the Secondary Math Team.
Sandra Booker, ESOL Supervisor for Secondary
Instructional Specialist, Elementary Math.
And Allison Giampapa, Elementary Specialist, Instructional Specialist, Elementary Math.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon.
Thank you all for coming. We have a great team. Good afternoon, everyone. So before we begin, we'll go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. This is Dr. Brenda Lewis, who is the Director of Elementary Curriculum and District-Wide Programs. And next to her is Catherine Malchodi, who is a Learning and Achievement Specialist in the Office of School Support and Improvement. And you know Mr. Scott Murphy, Director of Secondary Curriculum and District-Wide Programs. And just to cover what we will discuss today, we'll go through a little bit of background, and then we will share some of our updates with implementation. We will take a look at the classroom experience through seeing a couple of short videos. We will talk about some of the challenges that we're experiencing as we roll out the curriculum, and give you some updates about our communication and our next phase of the rollout. We often get the question from many stakeholders and parents about why we are using new curriculum in MCPS. And so it's important to remind our community that every 5 years, board policy states that we should review curriculum on a cycle of 5 years, and it doesn't mean that we replace it. It just means that we are looking at it to make sure we're up to date and current with latest research and that it's aligned to the latest standards. And so we do that every 5 years. In 2017, we had an audit of our K-8 literacy and mathematics curriculum that was conducted by Johns Hopkins University, and their recommendation was to purchase curriculum for literacy and mathematics that was more aligned to the Maryland College and Career Readiness Standards. And as a result, a request for proposal, or RFP, was submitted, and we had almost 200 stakeholders representing teachers, administrators, support staff, students, parents, and community members and our central office staff that participated in the selection process. And from there, our schools self-selected whether or not they wanted to implement the curriculum in the first year. Those are our Cohort 1 schools, or the second year, our Cohort 2 schools. So just to give you a little bit of background in terms of our implementation, last winter through the spring, we began the official curriculum adoption process and began the intensive planning with planning sessions with all 4 of our vendors. In addition to that, we held initial professional development sessions with our teachers and leaders, and we also held parent community meetings just to introduce the new curriculum resources. During the summer, we held training for approximately 4,700 teachers and administrators and began the difficult work of transporting hundreds of pallets of boxes of materials to schools. Very interesting process. During the fall and winter, we continued additional parent engagement through online and face-to-face presentations, and we also provided just-in-time professional development to our staff based on the needs of the students in their schools. And as we look to 2020 and beyond, we've already begun preparing for the next cohort of schools that will begin in the fall. We're currently preparing for professional development that will begin this spring, and we're working with our vendors to make adjustments so that for our second year of the implementation. And we're basically looking at the lessons that we've learned over the last year as we make those adjustments. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lewis, who will talk about mathematics from kindergarten to grade 8.
Each of our math curricula are aligned to the Common Core standards and the Maryland College and Career Readiness standards. Our shifts in instruction and learning demonstrate a deeper focus, a careful connectedness across the grade levels, and transition from one product to another, and a deeper level of rigor and command of the math concepts. Within our math, we have 4 components that I would like to talk through with you. Our first one is the fluency practice, then we have concept development, application problem, and student debrief, and I will give examples of each one of those. The first one that you see here is our fluency practice, and that is designed for maintaining prior skills, targeted practice, and focus for the current lesson. You will also see on the left-hand side a sprint that is an example of a fluency component where students build accuracy and speed with their math facts. The application problem on the right serves to provide students with an opportunity to apply their skills and understanding in new ways. Concept development addresses the new content being studied. This is where the teacher is actually modeling or teaching the lesson. And these examples come from a 3rd grade lesson.
Did we want to solve that problem now?
We'll have a quiz at the end. Here you'll see an example of an exit ticket, which is through the student debrief. And this is where students are engaged in a whole group discussion, challenging them to share their thinking and draw conclusions. And as I said, this is an example of an exit ticket that may be used for students during the debrief.
This is whole group or individual?
This would be individual exit ticket at the end. And one of the components that we have in our math curricula is the supports for all learners. So here you'll see the built-in components to scaffold the learning to meet the differing learning needs of our students. So our teachers have immediate access to that and some suggestions and strategies on how to meet the different needs in the classroom. As I had previously talked about, our math curricula demonstrate a shift from traditional math teaching model where the teacher does most of the talking to the students to a model in which students take an active role to see what they can figure out before having things explained to them or being told what to do. The teacher's role is to ensure students understand the context and what is being asked, to ask questions, and to advance the student thinking in more productive and deeper ways, to help our students share their work and understand others' work through orchestrating productive discussions, and to synthesize the learning with the students at the end of activities and lessons. Now we will view a video that showcases students and teachers sharing their perspectives about our math and English language arts curricula in elementary.
You know, kids really like this new program. There's a lot of different poems and short stories that all tie to a similar theme. They love that they can download it on their phone and do You know, kids really like this new program. There's a lot of different poems and short stories that all tie to a similar theme.
I know my students are learning from the math I'm presenting because after I've taught like the concept development, then when they go back to their seats, they are using the same vocabulary words.
Full capacity.
They are saying everything I've just said.
Less capacity.
There's a wonderful coherence in Eureka Mathematics, where the strategies that are introduced in like K and 1 are used all the way through to grade 5.
I am learning a lot from Eureka Math this year. I have learned the magnifying strategy,
A magnifying glass.
tape diagrams, vertical number sentences, and I learned about sentences.
This year, since we have Eureka Math, we have lots more strategies, so if someone doesn't think one strategy is working for them, they have another strategy to choose from.
The teachers are using these very effectively, and it really helps students make sense of problems. I actually had a student I was talking to, and he said, "Math gets me now."
I think the best part is that When we come back from math, we get our books out and we start annotating the text, and that helps me better understand it.
The structure of the reading block is a little bit different because it's more whole group focused. So you're often teaching a lot of mini lessons in a day. And I have found that in one day, a student is exposed to so many more texts than ever before.
I like whole group because everybody's interacting with each other, and we get to talk with each other or talk with a buddy, and then we get to share our thoughts with the teacher.
I think that the exposure to this text has deepened their understanding of the content, but also really supported their reading comprehension and reading fluency as well.
We can see that the students are really able to look at words, decode words, and apply the skills that they're learning whole group into their small group and independent work.
It feels like the time goes by faster because we're learning more.
Now we'll transition into some of the ongoing work in mathematics that our district is focusing on. While we are very encouraged by the rigorous mathematics resources we now have in our schools, we know that a strong curriculum alone will not increase our student achievement. Like many districts across the country, many of our students, particularly our focus students, are not achieving at high levels in math. The equitable resource study data here shows that as early as elementary, focused students are not as likely to be enrolled in the higher level classes compared to their monitoring group peers. This next slide focuses again on our monitoring group students entering 7th grade with higher incoming scores than our focus group students. So you can see we had the trajectory from elementary to middle school, and now this focuses on our students entering 7th grade. This can be attributed to the higher incoming performance scores as students enter middle school, the courses assigned to students within their schools, as well as inconsistent course offerings that we have available to students across our schools. We have some...
Dr. Wilson, Dr. Lewis, excuse me. Just wanted to say, if you go back one slide, this is an area of work, and I just see Ms. Dyson and Mr. Kutso sitting there. I know Ms. Morris was here a minute ago, that our OSI teams have already started working on in schools. This doesn't need a new budget year or a new initiative to help our schools understand about access and opportunity, about students who are already performing at high levels and making sure they get the appropriate placement. Whether they bring a pencil every day or not, or whether they do every piece of homework or not. And so I really want to just call this out. This part of the resource study has really informed our work with schools about what happens within schools and the assignment of teachers and the placement of students. So didn't want to miss the chance to give that little plug.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Here you will see illustrated 7 different areas for our ongoing work in math. We are looking at our highly effective curriculum and instruction, which you're hearing about today. We are also looking at building out our models for enrichment and acceleration, assessments and evidence of student learning, the supports that we are offering to schools, professional learning, family and community engagement, and teacher recruitment and quality. We wanted to share with you an implementation timeline for next school year, 2020-2021. All of our elementary schools will either be in year 1 or year 2 of our Eureka Math rollout. All of our middle schools will be implementing Math 6, 7, 8. Our first cohort of middle schools will begin with their initial algebra implementation, and we will have our algebra high school pilot courses, our algebra high school pilot will continue. We have our other accelerated courses of Math 4-5 and Math 5-6, investigations to Math 7-8, and continuing during our transition. For school year 2021-2022, we'll have our ELA and Math curriculum district-wide kindergarten through 8th grade and our revised accelerated courses beginning in 2021-2022. Wanted to move to our school support The Office of Curriculum and Instruction, Curriculum and Instructional Programs works collaboratively with multiple offices to ensure we are optimizing our school support. Support can include coaching, lesson modeling, learning walks with reflections, and discussion time and ongoing school visits to inform the implementation work. I'm delighted to introduce Kat, our instructional specialist, one of our instructional specialists with our Office of School Support and Improvement, and Kat will share with us ways in which she supports schools throughout our curriculum implementation.
Hi, I'm Kat Malchody. I am a Learning and Achievement Specialist in the Office of School Support and Improvement. I've taught elementary, middle, and high school math. I've held positions as a content specialist in schools, as well as I was an instructional specialist in secondary mathematics under Scott. In my current position, I continue to utilize my expertise in mathematics to support schools in a structured cross-office collaboration and coordination with the Office of Curriculum and Instructional Programs, OSIP. In order to support new curriculum, math programming, data analysis, instructional planning in schools, partnerships have been established with the secondary math supervisor, Christina Putman, and her fabulous instructional specialist. OSIP instructional specialists, as well as OSSI instructional specialists are, I said that wrong, OSSI Learning and Achievement Specialists are collaborating to provide new curriculum supports to schools through professional development, coaching, modeling, co-teaching, and even teaching the new courses. The teachers and instructional leaders I work with in schools have been incredibly open and receptive to support and feedback in terms of planning and instruction. I'm very fortunate to have good relationships with teachers who are willing to be vulnerable and take professional risks to provide meaningful academic opportunities for our students. I know it's working because they keep asking me to come back. It's a good thing. It's crucial to balance those coaching opportunities in planning and as well as in the classroom. We've experienced greater student engagement and increased understanding by making upgrades to the instruction in real time. Tomorrow I'll be facilitating an all-day professional learning for a department I work with regularly, and we decided to co-teach this week so that we could actually see the students in the courses, so that when we plan on Friday, we're planning with those students in mind. I even got to experience the sheer joy of a weather-related early release announcement in 8th grade. It was so exciting. Even I cheered. I feel very passionate about this work, and I'm always excited to spend time in classrooms with students. Just this week, a student shared with me that he loved the warm-up call, Which One Doesn't Belong, WODB, because every answer is right as long as you can explain your work. He was very proud to share his work, and he ran up to the Elmo to put his work under it, to show it on the screen, and then to hear from all of the different students in his class about their different right answers. Professional relationships between schools and central office really strengthen when there are genuine opportunities to work shoulder to shoulder in classrooms. Last week, a teacher and I were working with a student who had some language barriers, and we were trying to, really help them, and we were able to use tape diagrams to get them to represent situations and solve equations using word problems. And they were able to not only demonstrate what they knew, but they were able to show different methods of using the tape diagrams to each other. And I'm going to go back next week, and I'm very excited. They wanted me to come today, but I couldn't, so I can really see how they're doing with it. And while there are always challenges with new curriculum implementation in terms of pacing and planning and just the familiarity with the structures, I'm really confident that the resources that we have will provide invaluable support for teachers in terms of content and pedagogy. I'm excited for the students to interact with this rigorous content in a way that promotes inquiry and critical thinking skills. I'm also excited that the 7th graders and I learned this week in the proportional relations and percentages unit that Delaware, Montana, Oregon, and Alaska are great places for outlet shopping because they have no sales tax. And my son is also in Eureka Math as a 4th grader, and he may be watching this right now. He said they were going to, but I love it, and I'm so happy as a parent and as a lifelong educator. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Kat, and to all of our team who is working to support schools in these ways. I'm going to transition and begin talking about literacy, but Ms. Dixon, I'm so glad you had them introduce themselves. I wanted to acknowledge one other specialist who not only is a specialist in the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, but teaches first period math every day at Eastern Middle School. Mark Brennan, if you could just wave again. And so what a better way to inform our work here in the central office, but to actually teach it. And she's doing it every day as the teacher of record. And so that's just kind of another example of how we are working to really understand the curriculum and respond to what our schools need. So I'm going to begin to shift us to a conversation about English language arts, which, as you briefly saw in the video, is the benchmark curriculum at the elementary level and the study sync curriculum at the secondary level. Each of these, like with math, are fully aligned to the new standards, which was a concern that was noted in the audit a few years ago. This ensures that students are reading and engaged in text at their grade level, and also provides resources for teachers embedded in every lesson so that text can be scaffolded while also maintaining that grade level standard. This is rooted in building knowledge for students from a wide range of reading, and again, as we heard from Dr. McKnight, a focus on ensuring that students are able to see themselves in the reading, in the texts, in the authors that are represented, and in the ways they're experiencing the curriculum. In each of these curricula, both elementary and middle, there's a blend, both digital and print. And this allows for traditional print reading, but also adds digital platforms that are engaging for students, can be updated in real time, and can help personalize learning for students. It's important to note, though, that although we hear a lot about the digital platforms that are becoming more common in curriculum delivery, students still read hard copy print. And they take books home, they read novels, they use paper, pencil in the writing process. So we're working with our schools to really achieve that balance of leveraging the digital platform while also having the traditional print. In the benchmark curriculum, there's a variety of literacy experiences throughout the day, throughout the week, that includes whole group, small group, students reading aloud, students working together, students writing, students studying words, and also explicit study of phonics and the building of foundational skills with a clear progression of complexity as things become more abstract for students. Also want to point out that these English language arts curricula, both elementary and secondary, serve as the core curriculum for all students, including English language learners, students with disabilities. These curricula provide the core for all students, but also include English language development resources and other tools for teachers alongside the core curriculum embedded in every single lesson. They provide teachers with specific strategies, targeted language instructions, emphasis on listening, speaking, reading, writing, and really those scaffolds that are needed aligned to the core curriculum. There are also opportunities for enrichment, for advancement, for reading above level for students who are ready for more. At the middle school level, the study sync curriculum, the units are built on themes that are the core experience, again, for all students. The curriculum is intentional about including those diverse perspectives, diverse texts and authors, and culturally relevant materials. I want to point out that one of our experiences with the publishers has been a real understanding that that work is never done. It's never enough. And we found each of these publishers to be responsive to our feedback and work to constantly improve and expand the array of texts and text selections that are available to meet the needs of the diverse student population in Montgomery County. Again, there's a balance of digital and print, traditional fiction, nonfiction, and the digital platform that keeps students engaged. In middle school, students read 1 or 2 novels per unit, and then within the digital platform, there are daily videos that feature current events or topics of interest that resonate with students in the world that are aligned to the theme. There's also extended writing or research in each of the units that explores the theme or an essential question, and as students develop longer essays and develop their writing skills. Our teachers are finding that this is a high-quality curriculum with a lot to offer and a lot to learn, thus the need for ongoing training, professional learning, and support that we will talk about in a few minutes. But we would like to share one more video that you started to see earlier about what our teachers and students are saying at the middle school level. This features not only study sync and literacy, but also the illustrative Math Learn Zillion curriculum that Dr. Lewis mentioned earlier. So let's see the middle school video at this time.
Kids really like this new program. There's a lot of different poems and short stories that all tie to a similar theme. They love that they can download it on their phone and do assignments on an app that they don't even need internet access for. They'll stop me in the hallway with their phone and ask me a question about StudySync.
Using technology, it's just like our generation. The really cool thing about it is that we have online binders. It keeps all your work. It's not like you can lose it. You get to go back and check your work.
So with StudySync, the feedback for a lot of the questions is immediate. It's graded right on the platform.
And you put your answers in the computer and you send it in, it'll click back to you saying, this is what's wrong. This is what you need to fix.
This curriculum is a lot more rigorous. The standards are a lot higher in terms of the assessments and the kinds of writing they're expected to do. The flip side of that is that the support is higher too. I love the writing process with the extended writing, that it takes them through every single step of the way and gives them feedback. It gives them peer feedback. It gives us a chance to go in and give them feedback.
So I love how StudySync has lessons on grammar and vocabulary that students are able to transfer into their writing.
It really has changed the way that we do instruction in our English classes, and I think for the better.
This curriculum is developed where the kids can't just sit and get it. So they have to engage in it. The teacher is not doing the learning for them. So the teachers are not up there modeling as much of how to do each step. The students are interacting with the problems and they're making decisions on how to solve the problems.
Using the mathematical language routines helps students own what they're talking about and to be able to really make connections.
The curriculum spirals, and so it revisits concepts, and that gives the opportunity for different types of learners to access the material and become successful. As a special education teacher, I like the way that the curriculum has all of the materials, so then when I'm trying to modify things for my students, I'm not starting from scratch.
Everything is included, the lessons, teaching strategies.
So what planning looks like now is looking at student performance data.
Looking at what is actually happening in the classroom, what concepts are maybe needing a little bit more work.
So one of my favorite things about StudySync is that it really does lend to a lot of academic discourse for our students.
We share our opinions about the books. I get to talk with my friends while I'm at it.
And hearing other people's essays influence you. I think that helps me understand the book more.
My favorite part about math this year is working in groups or like partners when our teacher asks us a question, or if we do the work, we'll work together and I get to meet new people.
We get to share what's right and what's wrong, or how we feel about certain things.
And when I go into classrooms, I'm hearing kids talk about what are some good mistakes that we made. Students need to know the why and the purpose for what they're doing, and both the illustrative math and StudySync lend itself to that.
So we want to just say a quick thank you to our communications team and also to the schools that participated in the video. We appreciate the collaboration. So obviously you just saw a lot of the great things that are happening with the curriculum at both elementary and secondary, but we also want to be very transparent about the fact that there are some challenges as well. And we want to talk about some of the challenges that we are seeing as we go in to visit schools, or that we're hearing through our discussions with teachers and teacher leaders. First, teachers have expressed difficulty keeping up with the pacing of the lesson, which is to be expected. One of the things I should say before I even go into this is, as we talked with all 4 of the vendors of these resources, they all said the same thing. Expect it to be difficult in the beginning. The first 4 to 5 months, teachers are going to have challenges as they learn the new material. And we're really just in the 4th month. And so I think we have to continue to remind ourselves and give teachers the permission to struggle with the new curriculum a little bit in the beginning. But so this is what we've been hearing. Again, the pacing. If a lesson says that something is supposed to take 20 minutes, sometimes teachers say it's taking them a little longer to get through that portion of the lesson. And so what we have been doing as in a response to that is really providing teachers, again, the more time for planning, for curriculum study. We've developed some videos for teachers, and again, giving them permission to really kind of learn and struggle through that, and the students are also getting used to the new style and the routines, and so it's both of them experiencing and adjusting to the change.
Can I ask a question about the pacing? Because
Sure.
I heard last week a criticism that, last week was a 2-day week coming off of New Year's, but the expectation was that it was a full week in the instructional program, and that it was almost impossible. It was impossible for teachers to get through the material. So I just throw that out.
Yes,
I heard it from a parent.
In Curriculum 2.0, we did group things by weeks, but in this, it's not grouped in that way. So teachers should be able to get through. They may be with a snow day or something a day behind, but really they should be able to get through most of the content within a marking period or within a unit. But we are hearing teachers say that they're having some challenges with the pacing in general. Also, we want to share that because this curriculum is more rigorous and it's certainly aligned to grade level standards, some of our students are demonstrating some gaps in their learning, and so we really strongly encourage our teachers to do more pre-assessment as they understand what skills students may need some more support with and front load in that area. And finally, our teachers need support planning for the rigor of the grade level standards, and particularly planning for our ESOL students and our students who have disabilities, and really making sure that they can maintain the grade level standard but also scaffold that instruction as well.
Can we just pause for a second? Mrs. Smodowski has a question.
I just was curious. So you said you've heard some of those concerns that Mrs. O'Neill mentioned. What are we doing? How are we addressing it?
With the pacing?
Yeah, just in terms of making sure that our staff are comfortable and not feeling panicked, and that our students are getting the instruction that they need to move on to the next step, and we're not just skipping because they're short on time.
Right. And so, again, one of the things that I think the teachers have to get used to is the structure of the lessons. And the teachers have said to us, it's taking longer, and therefore they have to move on, and there are some areas. But in a lot of our resources, they will come back to some of those lessons. And so we are asking our teachers to just stay true to what has been designed in the curriculum, and don't worry about falling too far behind, that they'll revisit some of those concepts as they continue to go on. And teachers are finding, as they experience some of these discussion questions with students, it's getting easier. They're moving along a little bit faster. What used to take 30 minutes to do is now taking 20 minutes or now 15 minutes. And so it's getting a little bit better. Anytime we have a situation where we have a snow day or something happens where teachers aren't able to get through something, oftentimes our curriculum office will send a message to the teacher leaders to say, this is our recommendation for how to make adjustments.
I just wanted to kind of respond a little bit. I would imagine, too, that the teachers have plan books, and they keep track of what they do when, and they can adjust. It's almost like a recipe. You have to fiddle with it a little bit to get it just the way you want it. But I'm pretty sure they probably do that.
And just to weigh in on this concept too, part of our work in rolling out curriculum is also we didn't start with every school at once. Right. We started with a cohort 1, and we're watching the results and so forth, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but we're going to monitor cohort 1 teachers in year 2. Just like we have teachers who are teaching the curriculum, they're also giving us feedback, because we have a math group of which our folks are part of, and they talk about what the routines were like for both teachers and students that first month versus what those routines look like and how long they take in those months too. So we anticipate, and there's a lot of learning from this first cohort of schools that has also impacted the way we approach Cohort 2 schools, which is the majority of the rest of the schools, especially at the elementary level. So we want to sort of monitor how Cohort 1 evolves their thinking and their readiness for the curriculum, because they will have gone through an entire year one time solidly before the other schools start.
I really appreciate that answer, because I know that was a bit of a struggle with the last curriculum we rolled out, so thank you.
Okay. We want to talk about professional learning. In addition to the professional learning opportunities that are provided through the vendors that we've been providing throughout the school year, we also want to make sure that we are really addressing the specific needs of schools. And we have been providing professional learning through online opportunities for our teachers. We have professional learning communities for our teachers, webinars. We've been providing after-school training, after-school planning time. We've been doing some informal meeting, Zoom meetings or online meetings with some schools. So we're really trying to think very creatively about how we can meet the needs of individual schools or school teams. And we also want to let you know that our vendors have been really very flexible in terms of their plan that they have for professional learning. They know that we have, for example, a large ESOL population here in MCPS, and so they've made adjustments to the plan that they have for professional learning so that they can work with our ESOL teachers and our classroom and ESOL teachers together. So we've been really appreciative of their flexibility and willingness to work with us and kind of redesign what they had planned for professional learning. In terms of communication and engagement, our goal is to ensure that our parents and community members have the information they need to better understand the shifts with our new instructional resources. We have held parent nights at various locations throughout the county, and most recently hosted a virtual community conversation meeting where parents could send questions online. We were really excited that we had over 1,000 parents who viewed that online resource either on that day or they've been viewing it throughout, because it is something that is online and available for parents to view. We do want to mention, I know that you heard earlier in testimony that the attendance was low in some of our parent nights, but they were, we had great attendance when we first began to roll out the new curriculum, and all of those face-to-face meetings had live streaming. And so parents were able to also watch from the comfort of their home. And so we've seen the attendance slowly start to die down a little bit as we've continued the face-to-face meetings. But the online has really picked up. And so we are really pleased with that. But we'll continue to monitor and make sure that we are reaching out to our families in a variety of ways. In terms of our community engagement, again, we're really excited to share with our families that we have a family math support center. If you were to go on to the website and type in Math Support Center, you will find that in every grade level there are modules that correspond to what the students are learning in the classroom, and they have videos for parents and students. They're very short, 3 to 5 minutes, that just explain some of the math concepts that students are learning in the classroom, and it really helps parents who may be unfamiliar with some of the new math terms that their students are learning in school. I also want to say and appreciate the collaboration we had with our teachers who worked with us this summer to put together these modules and develop that online resource. Getting feedback from our parents is also very important to us, and also our staff. And so we did an informal survey with our parents in November during parent conferences. We had about 650 parents who responded to a survey that we had at the schools as they were waiting during the conference time. That feedback did share that they're generally pleased with the curriculum. Again, it was just a few months in, but they did have some questions about the enrichment and acceleration, and also particularly for elementary mathematics, concerns at that time around the volume of homework. So we began to work with schools around their homework practices and just making sure that students weren't too overwhelmed with what they were receiving at home. In addition to that, we also worked with our MCEA partners on an online survey that was given to all of the teachers in after the winter Thanksgiving break, and they completed it just a few weeks ago, and that really shared, again, mixed feelings as we roll out within the first marking period. Some teachers expressed some frustration, but also teachers were starting to say it was difficult in the beginning, and now it's starting to get better. So we're starting to see that shift. So we will survey teachers again in the third marking period so that we can see, using the same questions, whether or not their experiences are changing over the school year. And we also will be sending out a formal parent survey in the next few weeks that will be given in a few other languages. In terms of our technical supports, we did want to share that, of course, implementing 4 curricular resources to nearly 4,000 teachers and almost 60,000 students doesn't happen without a significant amount of logistical support from multiple offices. And we just want to thank our warehouse, communications, Office of Shared Accountability, our technology office, special education, family engagement, Office of School Support and Improvement, and also our union partners. We have a core team of content supervisors. They are all sitting up there in the back. They meet regularly with subcommittee members to discuss the logistics, to coordinate the technical and professional learning support. They talk with the vendors weekly, and they evaluate and have the metrics for success. And so our metrics really are around making sure that we are delivering the resources to our schools in a timely manner, and we have a process for that. Making sure that our families are well informed and that we have timely professional learning that meets the needs of the schools in that moment, and that we are also monitoring how our students are doing through assessment. So as we close today, we want to share that we've already begun to plan the next phase of our implementation. And we've also started looking and thinking about professional learning for the spring and throughout the summer, and thinking not only about what our teachers need, but also here in central office, what do we need to better be able to support our schools. And as we mentioned earlier, as Dr. Lewis mentioned, we will be moving all of our elementary schools and our middle schools into mathematics next year, because we really want to make sure that we focus on improving in that area. You can also see there that at the high school level, many people ask what we're doing with high school curriculum. We have already shared our literacy curriculum with MSDE, because they are actually vetting curriculum in all districts in Maryland. And so we've already shared with them our literacy curriculum for high school to make sure that it is aligned with the Common Core Maryland College and Career Readiness Standards. And then we, again, want to continue to make sure that we are focused on the communication with our community and keeping them updated on what is happening. So to end, our expected outcomes for our students, really, we want to make sure that our students are building their capacity, demonstrating strong mathematical knowledge and deep understanding. And obviously, we want our students to be college and career ready. And we will know that happens through our evidence of learning outcomes. And we use the assessments in the new curriculum to determine whether or not our students are learning Okay. So at this time, we are going to turn it over to you for questions.
Sure. So we started with Mr. Tinbite last. Now we will begin with Ms. Dixon and go around the table.
Great. Sorry. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. Congratulations. I think you had a seamless rollout of all of this. I mean, I haven't heard complaint one, and, I think that's wonderful. And the students look happy in the videos and engaged and working with each other. They really are darling. So, congratulations. By the way, the books, do you have any up in your office? Like copies?
Oh, yes.
Can I come up there and just, take
Absolutely.
a look? Yeah,
Sure.
I'm going to
We'll
Beverly
bring some
Farms
okay.
soon, but, to see the literacy especially, which is what I'm interested in. But I'd pop up there to visit you to see
Absolutely.
what you got. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Mrs. Smodrowski.
Thank you. I too want to congratulate you all. I feel like this has gone so much better and more smoothly than in the past. So I know that takes a lot of forethought and planning and support. So I only have two kind of questions. One, the assessments, it comes with the assessments, so we don't have to develop them on our own?
Yes.
Yay!
Yes. Very
They're
happy about
aligned.
that.
Perfect. Just wanted to clarify that. And quick comment just about what I was saying before. I just want to reiterate again how really, really, really important I feel like it is that we have this supports for our staff and our teachers to make sure that this is successful, because they're, the ones who are going to have to do it. And then my only other question is, what are we currently doing around, I've been hearing from parents who have liked what we've been doing and want to know about history and civics, and somebody posted something on social media the other day and tagged me in about areas that are looking at what's the project-based learning in civic type stuff, and then everywhere from elementary to high school and relating it all. So I was just curious, you don't have to spend a lot of time talking about what we do, but what the deal is with the history and science, I guess is.
Well, we have really had more conversations, honestly, about the science and really taking a look at just reviewing our science curriculum and making sure that it's rigorous and aligned to the standards. Less about the history and civics, but always, looking at our curriculum to make sure that it is aligned to standards and meeting the students' needs. But honestly, the science is the topic that we've been talking more about at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf.
I don't have anything to say. I just want to thank you for a job well done. And thanks to all your staff out there. The only thing I would say is I have heard about the amount of homework coming in from elementary school.
And kids are loving it, especially the Eureka that comes home every night.
Mrs. O'Neill.
Yes, well, anything was an improvement over the rollout of Curriculum 2.0, which was always just in time. So I commend you all for the smooth rollout. You talked about children coming with gaps or, into this new curriculum. But specifically, I'm concerned about our ELLs. How is this meshing with them and helping them?
Sorry. So one of the things that I like to do is to work with schools who have sort of English language learner challenges. As a math person, I always find it really, the connection to be really interesting. And so one of the wonderful things that we've been able to do is to use the math language routines that are embedded in the curriculum, but also supported by the National Council for Teaching Mathematics, NCTM, to really support language development in math. You can have math skills and have trouble expressing it in English. Sure. And so to be able to balance the idea that you're learning English, but your math skills may be there, it's such a neat balance to be able to work with schools on that. And I feel really confident in the resources that we've been using that they're going to be able to do that. That's exactly what I'm doing tomorrow at one of the schools. We're talking about structures and routines and how having those structures and routines allows students to learn language because the routines feel familiar to them, and so that they can concentrate on the math more so than that. And I think that can really help with language development. The only schools I really spend time with are schools where they do have those challenges, because that's important to me, to be able to have that lens so that everyone's not sitting there nodding and saying, yeah, I get this, I get this. You know, you want to have those barriers where someone, you know, I had a student who his first day in school was in the class I was working with. He'd never been in school before, and so we were able to, it's systems of equations, so it's the idea that you have two lines that intersect, and then you have inequality, so you have overlap, and trying to explain it to him with colors. And I know a little Spanish, I was able to use colors, but to make those connections so when he left the room, he knew what math we were talking about, if that makes sense, while still having that language, you know, be something that he was going to be working with.
I also want to share that in literacy, part of the reason this both resources at the elementary and secondary level were selected was because of the English language development resources that went along with the curriculum. And so our ESOL teachers are able to use resources that are directly aligned to what students are learning in the classroom. And so our teams have done a wonderful job of ensuring that our classroom teachers and ESOL teachers are planning together. And so there's that seamless transition when they're working with either teacher around receiving the language development that they need, and also that content that they need. And so really making sure that our teachers are still staying at the grade level, but scaffolding when needed.
Dr. Ducker. I want to thank Dr. Navarro and Ms. Hazel and Dr. Lewis and Ms. Malchotti and Mr. Murphy for this presentation, and the staff too. They've done a great job. And I do believe you sent us some books to look at before you, I remember looking at some of them, I was impressed, but I didn't go into detail. I want to thank you for the kind of training that you've been doing. This is according to the written materials that we got. That you've trained 1,800 staff at least, and that I have a note for ESOL training, which is what Mrs. O'Neill asked about. And the grade level team interaction, I think is going to be important for them rolling this out. And on secondary math, training in 21 of the middle schools. And I just wanted to ask to make sure that teachers that have been successful teaching math and language to students who speak other languages and to African American students, and you've heard this before, that they are at the forefront and can really work with other teachers on this. And I'm really excited about the parents, printed and online resources for the parents. New curriculum nights, you already mentioned that, and virtual community info nights where they can call in, and parent academy sessions, and data migration. Also, I think there were some notes in here about providing textbooks if parents wanted those, because we do hear that they didn't know how to look things up to help their students. And I had also a note about student voice, and you've already covered that. And the cultural part, I saw the picture, I think it was I Hear America Singing. So some of the cultural pieces are in the text, and I think that's really good. That's Walt Whitman, isn't it? I think it was.
I think it was too.
Was that Walt Whitman? Yeah. So thank you very much for everything you've done.
Ms. Silvestre. Again, thank you for this enormous effort in this first cohort. I wanted to ask, you mentioned some of the challenges, and one of them was the gaps that students that I guess the assessment process is identifying. So if I'm a teacher and I have to keep up with the pacing and I find that students have gaps, what do I do about it?
So one of the things that's nice with the math curriculum is that there are supports that are built in, so you can have your curriculum as it's running and then have supports for things, as maybe a year or two back in terms of grade level standards that they'll reference, so that you have an understanding, well, this was something from 4th grade, now we're in 6th grade, they should know this, so that you have that connection to make, so if there's a gap, you may oh, that student, wasn't really solid in their 5th grade skills or their 4th grade skills. The other thing that's really neat is that the lessons are designed to have multiple points of entry. So, with the one I mentioned, which one doesn't belong, a student can make a connection to something that may not be as complex as another student, but they can all get there. And so that they're able to participate and slowly move up to making those connections. Whereas previously they may have looked at something and been like, I don't know how to do it, I'm gonna shut down, I'm done. Now I have a point of entry, it's called a launch, but just basically to get kids really excited about what they're doing so that you're inviting more students to the table, if that makes sense.
So does the teacher do that as a side group? So you all need this extra 4th grade level, or is that homework, or how does the student actually get to do that work that you're talking about?
So I think it depends. If it's something that's more of a skill that's sort of a need at the elementary level, they may have more practice that they can have that sort of builds that procedural skill practice while still moving along with the conceptual development. One of the things that I have noticed too is that when a student doesn't have the procedural skills, people assume they can't think.
Just how do you do both things at the same time?
It's hard. I mean, it's a balance. So you have to find the time to be able to have students practice, but still participate in those big conversations where they're thinking, so that as the practice builds and the math builds, I still have had the time to really think about math in a different way, so that as my skills build, I'm still ready to have those conversations. I think sometimes we stop and say, the procedural challenges are such that they can't do this. Well, they can if I do them together. And so that's sort of a shift that I think a lot of teachers are making and seeing really positive results with. And it's one of the things that I've been excited about with the instructional routines that are in both the elementary and the middle school curriculum, that really give them that opportunity to do that.
Ms. Hazel?
The other thing I wanted to share is that we have, we also purchased interventions at the elementary and secondary level that are evidence-based interventions for schools. We trained paraeducators this summer to implement those interventions. And so when we see that there are some gaps that students may be experiencing, they can use either those interventions or some of their other strategies to be able to support students, to maybe front load some of that material or to be able to go and support. So they may do a whole group lesson. And then, as you saw in the video, the teacher was walking around, they had small groups kind of scattered across the classroom, and so that's when those students may be getting those specific skills. So there's an opportunity and there's an expectation that all of our students are getting grade level instruction on a daily basis, but then we know that some students have gaps, and that's where teachers will be able to do some of that small group instruction tailored to those students' needs. But we can't have them only receiving instruction at a below grade level, because they won't make the progress that they need to make.
Thank you. And so you also talked about teachers struggling with the planning for special education and ESOL. Could you talk more about that? What's happening there?
Well, I think part of the shift that we really want to make in schools is this understanding that everyone owns our ESOL students, everyone owns our special education students, and so it's not just the ESOL teacher's responsibility to teach the ESOL student. And so the classroom teacher and ESOL teacher working together, and special education teachers working together to do the planning around what language development might a student need in the general education classroom is really important. And so it's about thinking a little differently for classroom teachers, possibly thinking a little differently when they're planning for those students than having the ESOL teacher doing the planning in isolation.
Great. I remember when the curriculum was being adopted, there were concerns from parents about the enriched math, and there was additional work done around that. Where are we with that?
Sure. So currently we're still doing the C2.0 compacted math 4.5 and 5.6, but we're working with our AEI team and our math team to really do build outs of what does that enriched and accelerated instruction look like, and also looking at materials within our Eureka program, but also looking at other materials that we can bring in, materials that we have been using, and looking at what do those units of study look like and how to do that. So currently we're in the build out phase of that, and we're actually bringing that to our principal's curriculum update in March for them to weigh in on and give us good feedback on.
Great. And finally, you mentioned the high school curriculum being vetted by MSDE. When do you hear back?
Yeah, so that's has just begun in English Language Arts. We expect to get some interim report in the spring, which will give us some ideas about where to go moving forward in ELA. We really don't know what direction that will take. In math, it's going to be at least a year later. So what's being vetted right now is just English Language Arts, and then math will come the following school year.
And remind me, the middle school is considered secondary, right? But we do have a math curriculum for middle school. We also have a literacy curriculum for middle school? Yeah, okay. I'm concerned about the ESOL students at the secondary level, in particular high school. And so I know that they are using some new materials this year, but also would benefit greatly from an overall new high school curriculum for English Language Arts.
Yes, and I think the great thing about the middle school, and I kind of highlighted one of the teachers that I want to go visit her classroom, and she was actually came and spoke to the board, I think in December, from Gaithersburg. She's an ESOL teacher working, and the thing about our middle school students is they do have that tight aligned curriculum that is grade level standards with ELD supports embedded. Ms. Sanja Blattner and other curricular folks are working through supporting the transition phase while we wait to hear about the English, the review of the English curriculum at the high school level. So we will always be looking to support high school teachers when we have these sort of interim steps before we get final feedback from the state.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that what you said, Ms. Malchotti, about how difficult it is to teach two different levels or three different levels. It means that the teacher has to do two different lesson plans so that when the kids that are on level or don't need as much help are doing something in a group, you can do this in elementary. I don't know about middle school. Think about that. But also I wanted to mention Gaithersburg, and I think it's Highland, where they have done special programs so that the ESOL students are in with everybody else, and all the teachers are responsible for ESOL students. It's not just the ESOL teachers alone. And anyway, thank you again.
Thank you. Dr. Smith.
I just want to chime in on the conversation about math a few minutes ago, and as we think about the ongoing work around how to shift from what is really very much a binary system, yes, no. You go into compact math, you don't. If you think about literacy in school, it's not binary at all. And I love the way that you were talking earlier about, as a math professional, talking about understanding that we can work with students to go back and reach back there, and if they need 5 things, and I'm simplifying this, then I might want to have an intervention. But if they need 1 thing, then I can probably do that as part of my regular instruction, or 2, or they need these things. Literacy is very recursive. We keep doing it over and over this way. For too long, we've thought of mathematics as just all or nothing. You either get it and you're perfect, or you have to be in lower math and we're going to keep making you do the same thing over and over and over. That's kind of synonymous with saying, you don't read well, so we're going to go back and make you learn the ABCs over and over and over. We're going to go back and make you do sight words over and over and over. We're going to go back and make you do, short declarative sentences. The cat is brown over and over and over, even though you're reading at a 5th grade level and you're in the 7th grade. So this mind shift that Ms. Malchotti identified is so critical to the work around mathematics. You don't have to be perfect in any area to be able to progress and move forward. And that's a big, significant shift in our learning. And I'll tell you, as someone who lived in Asia for 7 years, it's something that the Asian educational systems understand in ways that we don't understand. That it's developmental, it's growth, it's moving forward, and I really I applaud you for just the way you guys were talking about that, and for continuing to try to look at how we move from this kind of binary, yes, no, you go, you don't go, to let's keep moving everyone forward. So thank you for that work, and I'll be looking forward to hearing more about it. We've been meeting a lot, all of us, and so.
Mr. Tinbyte.
I have no questions. I want to say thank you for this work. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'll just, Dr. Smith, did you want to say anything else?
I just wanted to say one more thing. Last fall, and I think this is instructive for all of us, and me as much or more than anyone else, one of the reasons this has gone so well, and it's not been perfect, it absolutely has not been perfect, because we human beings don't do perfect things, but it has gone very well, and I'd like to say that publicly to Maria and Nikki and Scott and Brenda and Kat and all of you, is because of the level of anxiety you have felt about it. It's true. Nikki, did you sit in my office and just were like, and I gave you a book called The Implementation Dip. Remember, anytime we do something, there is a dip. But their level of anxiety about this and making sure it gets done, and oh no, the shipping isn't working out of the warehouse is one of the conversations we had, and this is not, and the math is so much harder. Well, there's no way to ever get there except to do what we're doing right now, or to start with pre-K and take 13 years to implement a new curriculum, which means 12 years worth of kids are being shortchanged. So we need to persevere. And the other thing you've done, besides feeling incredibly anxious and worried, is been very, very responsive to the people who are doing the work on the ground in the school buildings. And so I really want to thank you publicly for that.
I just want to add my sincere thanks as well. Dr. Daka mentioned a lot of things that I was going to say about the parent resources, just us meeting our community where they are by having people be able to access the events that we put on via the internet. And I'm sorry, I forgot your name, our teacher of record in the audience, who is helping to inform our work by teaching in the classroom, the surveys that we're doing. There's just a lot of intentionality behind the work that we're doing. I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I do follow some people on social media, and I'm just going to call out Ms. Tamisha Sampson. I see where she posts the work that they're doing, and it's not during the regular school day. It's at her house, right? So everybody is working really hard. So don't think I don't notice, but I do. I see that kind of stuff. So I just really appreciate the work that everyone is doing, and just wanted to say thank you. This has been really great, and we have heard comments and feedbacks from our students. And I'm not in elementary school anymore as a parent, so I haven't heard a lot of people talk in a negative way, but there's a lot of excitement that we're having our students go deeper. And so I just appreciate the work and just wanted to say thank you. Yeah.
Our teacher at Eastern Middle, first grade every day, can you share your name
again?
Yes,
please, one more time. Brennan. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Margaret, okay.
Margaret, okay.
I thought it was Margaret, but that's
missed
not what
it.
I heard. All
Okay.
right, excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. So
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Thank you all.